Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Pause the video right now to check out my social media, my radio show, and thatdrummerguy.com. And most of all, enjoy the following presentation.
Hey, John, Bobby.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, good. I just got your text, and I figured I'd just give you a shout, give you an extra few minutes that way.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to do this interview.
Yeah, man, no problem. Love doing them.
Oh, awesome. Well, of course, there's so much to talk about in the world of Overkill, but the one thing I was able to line this up for was a brand new tour, the Metal Alliance tour that you're going to be headlining with Crowbar, Havok, Blackfast, and Invidia.
That's right. We start on September 8th out in Joliet, Illinois. It takes all the way through September. Sounds like it's going to be fun. This is our first B market, or many B markets, on a tour in quite a long time. Some places I've never been. Waterloo, Iowa, for instance. I haven't been in Dayton, Ohio, I don't think, since '89. I mean, we're talking about some different places, so that was kind of the idea of it. And we were happy to be part of this. We've known Crowbar for a while, and the Havok guys have been kind of loose friends of ours over these years, so it should be a nice presentation, I think.
Oh, very much so. I mean, unfortunately, it's not hitting my area in Minnesota, but I do love the fact that you are going out and hitting all these different places that you guys haven't hit in quite a while.
Well, that's the idea. I mean, you know, usually what has always worked for us, and, you know, this is a band that's been around, you know, even when heavy metal was a dirty word, we were out there touring. If we could hit those A markets and pepper them with B markets, we could tour back in the 90s, early 2000s, and we could just continue to do it. But as, you know, the health of the scene got better, the A markets were killers. So, you know, when you're coming down the West Coast, you did Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, and then, you know, across the bottom through the major Texas cities and Phoenix and Arizona, and then the good Florida cities and up to New York. But that's really a wrap around the whole country. It's not really getting into, let's say, some of that heartland. You know, it's not getting into Richmond, Virginia. It's not getting into Pontiac, Michigan, which we have the chance to do on this one. So it's, I suppose to some degree, it's a testimony to the health of the scene, and probably the courage of the Metal Alliance people to put it in B markets.
Yeah, and it also says a lot about the variety that's also going on there, too. I mean, like, Crowbar and Overkill alone do not sound like each other, and then when you add in everybody else, I mean, it's going to be a great night filled with all kinds of great different metal.
Yeah. Music to bash by at different speeds. I mean, you know, we actually, you know, the Crowbar Overkill thing works. We did it in Europe at the end of last year, and thought it had a tremendous success based on the contrast between the two bands. Because, you know, when you strip it down, distorted guitars are distorted guitars. It's just about tempo. And I think thrash heads still like a pounding beat. And I think those that are more into that doomier, you know, harder rock slow beats still like some thrashy stuff. So it really kind of worked for us when we took them through Europe. And obviously became great friends with them. They're, you know, been around almost as long as we have. So it's we have a lot of the same aspirations and the same kind of people, which, you know, I kind of like that, touring with people who have the same thing. I'm not into the fight unless it's on stage, put it that way.
Yeah, definitely.
I like that competition. I don't like competition during the day.
Yeah, and that was a great thing when I was able to see you guys last when you were touring with Symphony X. I mean, two very different styles, but, you know, it's just like, with it covering so much ground into there, it makes for a great night, and, you know, it can always help making Overkill fans become Symphony X fans and vice versa, and I can imagine that's going to happen with this Metal Alliance tour as well.
I would hope so. I mean, it's, you know, it's not over. I mean, that's really the thing. I think that when you look into the heart of this band, and I can't obviously speak for other bands or for the rest of this tour, I can only assume, but when you look into the heart of this band, we don't do this because it's, we don't walk through it. It's not about going through the motions and mailing a record in or a live performance. You know, the idea is that, you know, each show is of a competitive nature for us. Each show should be considered your last. You know, and if that's the way you're living for 35 years, there's something out of that comes the satisfaction. Not like, oh God, not another tour. You look forward to it. You hype yourself up for it. You say, hey man, as much as I like the Crowbar guys, I want to beat them into the stage every night. I want to go out there and be competitive, you know. And I think that that's probably the winning ticket, or at least the winning attitude for how to present yourselves, or how to do this for, let's say, 3 decades.
Yeah, and that's totally the impression I get whenever I've gotten the chance to see you guys live. Is it's always a killer show every time I've seen you, whether it was the Ironbound tour, the tour of Symphony X, or when you guys come up to Minnesota again. I just know that you guys are going to be putting on that show, and you're going to be giving the fans their money's worth and playing the songs that they want to hear, the songs that you want to play, and be able to represent the great band known as Overkill.
I've always been really, you know, I'm a proud person, and that pride has grown over the years with this band, because, you know, it's become something I never could have imagined it would become, just with regard to its longevity. But the fact that it actually touches people, and I suppose somewhere inside I'm a kind person, but I mean, really, I'm just a guy from New Jersey who's doing what he likes and feels like he's getting over. You know what I mean? I mean, this is like, what a great revenge on fucking life, doing what you want to do. You know, so I think that, you know, the excitement you get, this is what I'm getting at, the excitement that you get from an Overkill show is that mentality coming across, that there's 5 guys in their 50s that can't believe, well, 1 in their 40s, that can't believe they still get the opportunity to do this, and they're going to make the most of it. And I think that pays off, because if you carry that from day to day, then you usually get good results, and when you're looking back, you say, yeah, that was killer. Let's just bring that into the present day. And that's, I think that's a good formula for success.
Oh, very much so. And in speaking of that, of course, you touched on it a little bit, but there has been a new addition to Overkill with Jason Bittner on drums, who has been easily one of my favorite drummers, a part of all the bands that he's been a part of. What is it like working with Jason?
Well, you know, we have a long-standing relationship with him. I mean, we've known this. I used to call him Kid when he used to show up, because I'd always forget his name. I mean, I think he was 18 years old. He was a friend of Tim Mallory's. And this is back during those dark days of metal that I kind of spoke of earlier. You know, we still got the opportunity to tour back then because we figured it out and we wanted to do it. And he would show up in the upstate New York areas around Albany, Saratoga, and there's a bunch of areas up in upstate New York we used to play all the time. And and he'd always show up with sticks in his back pocket as if he was going to be the drummer that night, you know. And I'd say, hey, kid, you got your sticks? And I guess there's 10 or 11 years between Jason and I. So, I mean, I'm 28, he's 18, or, you know, 17, something like that. And he's always been in touch with us. And when he got into Shadows Fall, you know, I'd run into him on the road. He showed up in Los Angeles one time at a NAMM convention. We were doing a show on the Sunset Strip, and he said, can I play? Can I play? And I was like, this kid is cut for thrash. This is what it's all about. So when Ron left and Eddie came in and was temporary for us, when we really got serious about saying, where are we going with this, he was really the only name that came up. We said, we know him. He's got an East Coast personality. He's kind of from our areas, a few hours north of me. You know, so we understand each other. The sense of humor is the same, which is huge for us. We don't want to tour with guys that we don't want to be with. You know, we want to be able to tour with guys that we know. And he knows the shit. So regardless of what he's done in the past, you know, I can always say he was really one of Overkill's first, you know, kind of drum groupies. You know, hanging around the stage waiting for Tim Mallory to, oh, Tim can't play tonight. I got it. So he's a thrash head, true and true, and I think that's where his heart is. And he obviously feels very at home with this, and to some degree has brought us up a level with regard to musicianship when it comes to his abilities.
Yeah, and that's just so cool to see. I mean, you never know. I mean, when you're starting off like 18 years old, 17 years old, like Jason did, you know, just like being a fan of Overkill, who would have thought that decades down the road that he would be a permanent member of Overkill and being able to get Overkill into the next level in 2017?
Well, you never know. I mean, and that's kind of the thing. You just never know. I mean, but I think Overkill's kind of a different configuration or a different animal than that of, most with regard to the music industry. When the shit got bad, a lot of guys went home and said, hey, not for me. I don't understand why nobody's paying me $1 million and not recognizing my genius. We said, hey, this is going to take a little bit harder work to get out there and keep record deals. This is going to, a guy came up to me just recently and said, hey, glad to see you guys are back. I said, you know what I said to him? I said, fuck you. I said, pay attention. We never left. You did. Well, obviously I'm a proud man. And there was a sideways smile at that fuck you. But I think the point is that this is a band that's always been able to figure out and know what it wants. It's about when we stand on the stage, it doesn't matter what happens around us or what happens in this industry. We still think we're the best band in the world when we're standing on that stage. And if you can believe that, you're going to get some great results over that hour or 90 minutes.
And that's why you guys end on the perfect song. Like, every time that I've seen you, you guys end with fuck you, and it's just a great way to send that off. I mean, you guys, like, own the stage every time that you go and play, and, it's great to see that attitude that's going on there. You gotta have that feeling that you're the best band out there, because you have fans coming out wanting to see you, you want them to buy merch, you want them to come and see you again, so you gotta have that mentality, and you gotta live up to it.
Well, but it also has to be, it has to be natural and it has to be real. If it's contrived, then it's contrived, and people know that. I would know it. But I think when you get a bunch of excited guys that still think that they're in their 20s, when they're obviously not, but for that 90 minutes can actually feel like they are, it's kind of like, being transported to another time. And that's where all that energy comes from. I mean, for the last probably 3 or 4 years, I come out on stage after the second song and say, there's one rule: I'm in charge. Anybody have any problems with that? Speak up now. Now, obviously, it's meant tongue in cheek, but somewhere in there it becomes an ideology, and for that ideology, for that amount of time, it works for us. And I don't like to compare us to others. I like to compete against others, and with that as our first foot in the door, I think we have a pretty solid chance of winning. So
yeah, and there's no better example of that right now than with the Grinding Wheel. I mean, this is easily some of the best work that you guys have done to date so far, and it just feels so fresh and inspired in 2016 into 2017 when it was eventually released. But it shows that you guys are on the top of your game, that you guys are still hungry, and that creativity is still there, and you want to do it.
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons for it. I mean, first is opportunity, and the New York area, New Jersey area is unto itself, as opposed to many other areas in the United States. And this was the first immigrant stop. My grandparents were immigrants. I mean, maybe yours were too, but they were immigrants in this area, and there's something about this area that toughens you up. I remember my uncles telling me when I was a kid, these are first generation American Irishmen saying, what you gotta fucking do is shut your mouth and work hard. It's just, you start taking that over to the next generation. I think that that's where the freshness comes from, because you're looking for opportunities, and that's where the working hard comes in. It's not about telling you how good we are. We'd rather work hard and show you that we want to be better. And each guy is trying to self-improve. My vocals, for me, have gotten better over the last decade. I've had more improvement than the decade before, because I've pushed myself in different directions. And for me to be able to do that and not be afraid to do that at my age means I'm still learning things. And if I'm still learning things, then I have something new to present, at least in my own head. So it becomes a psychological battle of self-improvement, keeping my mouth shut and doing the best I can under the circumstances, and I think that then we get good results. results. There is no mailing it in. You know, oh, you got anything left from the last record? Maybe we can get a song out of that. Or it's none of that. It's all fresh. It's all new. It's all to be improved.
And speaking of that, what would you say that you've learned or improved upon with the grinding wheel as far as yourself?
Well, you know, I've always known, as far as vocals go, I've always known that I've had a great attraction to just simple classic rock and roll. It's, you know, it's something that for years I've been trying to infuse into the Overkill thing. And Dee Dee has it too, but he has it more from a punk rock, classic rock and roll kind of approach to things. And when the two mesh, it gives the music breathes because there's more space. And it gives a guy like me who likes classic singers, Roger Daltrey, for instance. I was always a big fan of the early Queen because of what he did with what was simple rock and roll that became progressive as time went on. It gives you room to breathe. And I think that on the grinding wheel, I have opportunities to infuse what I'm attracted to. For instance, the center sections of Mean Green Killing Machine, the center section of Shine On, the song Let's All Go to Hades. It's a rock and roll approach. Now, how do you make that thrash? You have to add the right amount of energy and make the turns happen to not go high all the time as a rock and roll singer would do, but bring that last turn to a lower note. And so for me, there's a lot of thought that goes into this, but it's just a natural kind of a thing, and it appears all of a sudden very fresh, but it's something that I was attracted to as far back as being a kid. You know, these types of singers. So I think that that's probably one of my biggest improvements on this, or biggest accomplishments, is being to finally be able to fuse them with Dee Dee's punk writing style.
Yeah, I can definitely say that from a fan perspective. It's like, I really love your vocal delivery on the grinding wheel. I mean, whether you're getting more melodic with it, the more high notes, low notes, whatever the case is, I mean, it just feels so distinctly perfect for whatever the riffs are going on, and every vocal lyric means something to it. I mean, musically, I mean, it just, everything about it just sounds right.
Well, they have to be married correctly. I mean, you know, this is heavy metal. It's really about the relationship between the drums and the guitar. I mean, that's really what it is. You know, I mean, we've been producing our records, you know, forever, usually giving them over to somebody else to mix. But I think that if we go in understanding that, and even myself as a vocalist understanding that, you know, I'm really third or fourth in the pecking order here. You know, we have to look at it that way to make a great heavy metal record. Then I think you know, you have a clarity. There's not a bunch of guys saying I want to be the quarterback. Then, you know, it's a bunch of guys who say, you know, I fit better at you know, at defensive end, and I'm a better running back, and he's a better wide receiver. You know, so I think that that's kind of the way we look at it, is that relationship between drums and guitars. And from there, it kind of gives us the freedom because it becomes devoid of ego. We know what's important when we want to present an Overkill record.
And with that in mind, with so much music having come out since the beginning of Overkill, how much has it inspired you to keep progressing with seeing what bands are capable of now today?
Well, you know, I think, you know, sometimes I hear something that really blows my mind, and then sometimes I think to myself, it's a fusion of many different things I've heard before. I really like some of the Volbeat stuff. I mean, I really go, wow, you know, and these guys have been around for a few records now. But when I think about what they're doing, I really say, wow, it's a whole bunch of different stuff that I've actually heard before. They just have made like the right formula for it to, like, you know, put a light off in my head where I say, wow, how great is this shit? So what inspires me is more from the inside. What I really like, for me personally, is seeing a singer where I say, man, I can't do that. How does that guy or that girl do that? And usually what I do is I ask, you know, and I remember touring with a girl over in Europe a few years back, and she was teaching me some of her singing techniques. And I said, that's right. I remember this from all the way from the beginning, and I've totally forgotten about it. And she kind of reinstituted it into my daily protocol, so it was, something like that. It's just really about keeping your eyes open. And that's, for me is, I'd rather be a student, because if you're the teacher, you're done. You're closer to retirement if you're the teacher. If you're still the student, you still have something to say, you still want to get out there and, raise your flag of protest.
Yeah, that's an amazing way to look at it, and the right way to look at it as well, because as much as I love what's going on with the grinding wheel, I know you guys haven't done your best material yet. I know that's still to come. You guys are definitely showing that with every album, with everything just evolving better and better and better, and I just can't wait to see where things are going when you have that mentality in mind.
Yeah, but, I think the beauty of it is we don't know. That's kind of the beauty of it. The surprise is part of the attraction to this whole thing, that when your eyes light up at, we're writing in separate places sometimes, maybe these riffs and drum beats start all together in one room, and there's a few Heinekens are out, and there's a half-eaten pizza, and the riffs are happening. But then you get home and you start working on these things, and it's 2 o'clock and you can't sleep, and you go downstairs and you hit record and you have it, and you can't believe it. You go, oh my God, it was always inside me, and I can't fucking believe it. And then now you can't sleep for 3 days because you think you're holding, you think you have the Holy Grail in your hand, and that's, and I think that's the beauty of writing is the surprise of it. There's no big preconceived notion to this. It's just about turning that light on inside, or finding that Holy Grail.
And speaking of that, what was the last moment where you did have that Holy Grail moment when you were recording?
Well, so they happen on every record to some degree, but I would say on the grinding wheel, when I'd first heard the opening track, I was enamored by the fact that it went in all these different places. We had Dee Dee had now sewn these riffs together. That was classic thrash with a modern punch. Took a step back into an era, a Sabbath-esque era, and then brought it back with a flying classic thrash with a modern punch. And I said, it's going everywhere. I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do with this thing, But then, as we talked earlier about infusing like some of my favorite rock singers into this, I said, what would Roger Daltrey do here? What would Ian Gillan do in this part? That's kind of the thing. So when I had joined, for me, when I had joined the verses that were thrashy to the center sections, which were a lot more rock and roll or doom-esque to some degree, together, I thought I had something really special there.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's easily one of my highlights of the album is exactly what you were talking about. I mean, being able to approach it with that style, and just like harkening back to what you were saying a bit ago about just like getting that more classic rock feel behind it, and it's definitely one of those moments.
Well, I think the key is not just coming in and singing Babble O'Reilly. The key is making it overkill. It's the idea is that it should be influenced by such, but still be natural to what the song is. And I think that's really the last indicator to grabbing the brass ring, to say, okay, now it's ours. It still has to have your stamp on it at the end of the day. So that's the indicator for me that is it an overkill song or not. Regardless of where influence comes from, it has to say overkill when it's on its brand.
And I definitely hear that as well when you are able to do covers as well. I mean, whether it's Fuck You, whether it's Emerald, whatever the case is, I mean, you're always able to have that overkill stamp on it, paying homage to the original, but being able to make it overkill. Well,
yeah, you don't want to destroy it. I mean, you don't want to add something to it that, and the reason you cover a song is because it's great to begin with, so you want to have that shine through that greatness, and that's not necessarily our greatness, that's somebody else's. So, but you still want to be identifiable reliable as you doing it. And I think that that's a lot of that is the way we'll play it. We'll always play it on top of the beat. We won't lag behind. My voice is distinctive. Dee Dee's bass playing is very distinctive. It's an out front instrument. We don't hide it just to hold the bottom up. It's something that's heard and pronounced. So I think that, you know, it's easy for us to put our stamp on a cover and say, oh, this is Overkill, for instance, doing Emerald.
Yeah, and that's totally the right approach to have that too, and that's what I've always admired about whether it's the original Overkill music or whether you guys are doing covers. I mean, you're doing it right. You're making the right formulas with it, and not having the preconceived notions behind it, but just going with the flow, seeing what works, changing out parts where it's needed. But no matter what the case is, you guys always seem to do it right, and that's what I really love about the grinding wheel.
You know, I'll tell you, we just did a benefit yesterday for Rock Against Dystrophy. It was Dee Dee, Derek, Ron Lipnicki came in and played drums, and Dave couldn't make it up here from Florida, but we had Chris Caffery come in. And we did 2 Priest songs as covers. We did Rapid Fire and Grinding Wheel of British Steel. Nice. And you could just feel that everybody in the band moved to the front of the stage. So you knew we were in our wheelhouse. You know what I mean? The feet went up on the monitors. Dee Dee's playing his bass around his ankle. Pounding the world. I said, man, we're in a wheelhouse right now. This is right for us.
Oh, that is so cool. Getting back back into the upcoming tour, which starts off in early September. Have you guys thought about what you're going to be playing as far as a set?
Well, you know, having Jason in the band now for approximately 15 shows, he's just done festival runs with us, a couple of headlines peppered in between in Moscow, St. Petersburg, Kiev. We headlined 2 German shows, all the rest of it festivals. We're going to do the headline set that he knows and keep adding songs. I mean, he's a dictionary. It's not like it's an issue. All he needs is 2 or 3 days to add or subtract a song. So he's about 20 deep with regard to what he's played live with us. So we'll start off with that. So we have the set that we headlined with Jason through Europe that we'll bring out on this set. And some of them are oldies, like, you know, Electro Violence from Taking Over in the 80s, I Hate from Years of Decay, and some new ones. There's 3 new ones in there too.
Oh, very cool. I mean, yeah, I can imagine how hard it is to be able to pick out a set. I mean, especially with this being the 18th album from Overkill, you know, just like picking out the right songs for headlining sets and trying to represent the discography the best you can. But I've always noticed with you guys, you always seem to pick out the right songs for the right tour, and it always comes out sounding killer.
Well, you know, you like to mix it up. I mean, there's some classic tunes that should be in there that are a little bit expected. I mean, we're not just totally selfish boneheads here. I mean, you know, we understand people want to hear Elimination or Fuck You or, you know, maybe In Union We Stand or Wrecking Crew. And we'll pepper it with a few of those kind of classic kills. And, but, you know, there's part of the set where we become a little selfish and say, you know, fuck it, just because everybody else doesn't open up with a song from the new record doesn't mean we're not going to. You know, we're going to do that, you know, because we're still in the business of making new music. And they're the most exciting tunes to play. Goddamn Trouble, Our Finest Hour, Shine On, Mean Green Killing Machine. These are the exciting ones for us to play because they're new. And new means new territory. And new territory means it feels risky. You know, it doesn't matter how rehearsed you are. I've played Rotten to the Core. I mean, in my life, 22,000 times. I've played Mean Green Killing Machine in my life live 25 times. So the new ones have to be in there to excite the band. So I think that if that excitement is contagious and gets into the crowd, and then and some of the people know it, it just kind of spreads out like a fire. So it you know, it feels great to have the new songs accepted.
Oh, very much so. And you know, from a fan perspective as well, I mean, when a band is touring behind their new album, you want to be able to hear what the band is up to nowadays as well. And it's great when a band is able to add new material because that inspiration is there again. I mean, you can switch out songs, you can play the new songs, enter new territory like you were talking about, and it makes for a brand new experience.
Well, when I go to a show, sometimes I feel, and it's not always, but sometimes I feel like, oh, this next song's off our new record, but please hang in there, it'll be over in 3 minutes. I feel like, oh, where the fuck did I even come? Hang in there for 3 minutes and we'll get back to the old stuff. Well, you know what I'm saying, so you're obviously laughing. But I mean, that to us is not one of our principles. I mean, we're still, like I said earlier, we're competitive. We believe that what we're doing is the right things for us. We believe a lot of the people who listen to us are very much like us. So, is there a risk? Sure, but it's not such a great risk when you're out there playing it to your friends, and your friends obviously want to hear, what have you been up to lately? Well, this is it. Goddamn trouble. This is what we've been up to lately.
Yeah, and it's a great thing to be able to see that as well. And again, with the Grinding Wheel, I mean, like I mentioned before, it's like some of the best material you guys have done to date, and I know you guys are far from finished from putting out your best material, but it's so great to see that you guys are going out and touring, giving this album the representation it deserves, and having a moniker tour like this with the Metal Alliance, and being able to tour with such diverse metal bands, and being able to close out the night and bring this whole metal show around the B markets. And I'm sure you guys will be coming back next year with some more touring as well. It's great to see all of this promotion that's going on there, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be able to do this.
No, John, it's my pleasure. I'm glad you had the time too. It worked out well.
Oh, awesome. Well, before we wrap things up here, is there anything else you'd like to mention that I haven't brought up yet?
Geez, not really. I mean, we're busy touring. September through the U.S., then over to Asia, back to Europe through November and December. We'll be over there with the Caballero Boys, and then Australia and South America come up early 2018, followed by a DVD release and probably some specialty U.S. shows. That should be around April.